Hello, everyone. Kevin O'Shaughnessy from Schooley Mitchell Red Bank. Welcome to another edition of what I'm calling Spotlight on Local Business. With me today is Dr. Robert Balko with the Atlantic Center for Acupuncture. Welcome, Dr. Balko. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks. Thanks for inviting me.
Excellent. I'm glad you had the time. So why don't you just give us a quick little info on you, a little background, sort of how long you've been in business, maybe where you studied?
Okay. I've been in business for 15 years. I got my license in the beginning of 2005. And I studied at the Eastern School, which is in Montclair, New Jersey. And then I went on to study at the Pacific College of Oriental Medicine. I got my doctorate out of San Diego. In between then, I was went to China, and I went to school there for a few weeks over a number of years.
Wow. Okay. So, why don't you tell us what drew you to medicine, and especially sort of the Eastern style of medicine?
Well, it's kind of funny is I got sick. In my former life, I worked in the corporate America. I traveled a lot. So a lot of airlines, a lot of hotels, a lot of poor diet. And I came home one day and I was sick. And my kids were very small at the time. And we were taking them to a guy we called the shaman. He had some strange herbs that I didn't understand. I wasn't sick, so I wasn't paying too much attention to that. But the kids were getting better. So when I came home sick, I went to see the shaman, who was actually an American. And he gave me some guidelines and changes to make. And within a month, I lost 15 pounds. I was feeling so much better. And we became friends. And I started to realize that he was helping my body heal itself. And I thought that was so awesome. If I could help people do that, that would really be fulfilling. So I looked into going to school, and I thought I might go part-time maybe. And I got all the paperwork together, and then I got laid off from my corporate job. And this was 2002. There were no jobs to be found in technology, which is where I worked. And so I went off to school, and 3 years later, I graduated.
Yeah, so it was almost fate. It worked out well. Like, you sort of, you wanted to do it, and then the universe allowed it to happen.
Exactly.
So. Yep. But I know you're more than just acupuncture. So why don't you explain to us a little bit more what a patient can expect when they come see you?
Okay. So over the years, I obviously do acupuncture, but I've incorporated some more modern things in addition to that. As an example, I have a class 3 laser, which is perfectly safe for working on any part of the body. And what it does is it stimulates the body to ramp up its cellular production and reproduction. So it makes you healthier, it reduces inflammation, increases circulation, and helps balance out hormones. Sometimes I'll even use it as a substitute for the acupuncture for some people. Another thing I do, there's a lot of traditional things in acupuncture that we do, or Chinese medicine that we do. There's herbs you take internally, there's herbs you take topically that you might put on, say, a tendonitis in the elbow or something like that. Then there's cupping, and there's something called gua sha, and that's probably about it for now. I do use electrical stimulation on people, like for orthopedic problems and for brain and stroke injuries.
That's good to know, because I think most people just expect, they're going to go to acupuncture, just going to get the needles, but there's clearly much more to it.
Right.
So, and now, having said all that, is there anything, though, you consider yourself more of a specialist in? Anything you're specializing in?
There actually is, yes. I have been working a lot on a program to be better versed at treating stroke and brain injuries. And this is a growing problem in the United States, as more and more people are getting strokes, and they're getting them younger. And I've known some people personally who've had strokes at a very early age. 39-year-old friend of mine had a stroke. Oh. And so there are specialized programs where I'm learning from people who have been to China. We actually both studied in the same school in China, but they spent 4 years there learning more about exactly how to treat brain injury, stroke, and incorporating the Western modalities into that, which I'll get into a little later. The other one I specialize in is allergies. And I've got a program that I've been using for about 11, 12 years now, that once I treat someone for their allergies, they're gone. They don't really come back.
Wow.
Unless they have a real problem with their immune system, then we might have to work a little harder at it. But for the most part, it's a fantastic system. It doesn't include needles, and you don't have to avoid the food for you don't have to avoid the substance for very long. And that's one of the problems with treating allergies is you have to stay away from that substance for a long time.
Well, I'll definitely come see you about that because the allergies get me good. And last time I went to the doctor and they prick you with all those things, you get the bumps, and then they tell you, well, you have to come back every week for a shot. That's not for me. So we'll definitely talk after this, Doc.
Okay.
So
I've heard people tell me that they've gone for years for those shots and they still haven't gotten the results that they're looking for. And for depending on what the problem is, it could be a couple visits or it could be multiple visits. But once we're finished, we're finished. It's not an ongoing years-long process.
Well, that's great to know. So, but all right. So I guess you alluded to it slightly, but do you ever work with local doctors, sort of take a two-pronged approach to someone who's having a lot of trouble? Maybe, East meets West.
We do that a lot, actually. I coordinate care with neurologists, orthopedists, chiropractors, primary care doctors. They love to send people out to us who can specialize in something, or if they've gotten something that can't be dealt with. That's what I say a lot about the allergy treatment is I work with a couple allergists when they have some real bad cases, they send the worst cases to me and then I can work on them with them. That's really helpful. And I do that with chiropractors all the time. I'm sending people back and forth between me and a chiropractor. For the brain injuries and strokes, I work a lot with neurologists for that.
That's good to know. All right. So, I know we just said there's more to acupuncture than the needles, but I think a lot of people are fearful of the needles, and maybe they thought about going to see someone like yourself, but they're scared of cats. When they think of the needles, it's no good. What do you do to allay their fears?
Well, it depends on the person. Some people, I can have a conversation with them and they're fine and they'll give it a try. And I'll even say, we're going to do one needle. And if it really bothers you, we're going to take it out and we're going to send you home, no charge. So that they can fully experience it with no obligation, right? Sometimes, I'm going to show you a needle. So this is a needle. It comes in its own little guide tube because it's so thin that it needs the tube to be pushed into the skin. Otherwise, it'll just bend. They're on the order of, this one is 0.2 millimeters. So it's 0.2 of a millimeter. So you could probably fit 5, 10 of these inside of a hypodermic needle that you're getting with your flu shot. For people who are really needle phobic, I'll use a laser for treatment because I can treat those points almost just as well with a laser than I will with the needle. And sometimes we'll send them home with a topical prescription where they can, maybe massage it into, say, their elbow or their wrist, wherever the problem is. If it's an orthopedic problem, we can do something like that. I have some teas that are really helpful for stroke patients. It's a specific formula for stroke patients. Another one that's general for stress. And I have another tea that I use during this time for prevention from COVID, which has helped a lot of people really well.
No, excellent. All right, well, just real quick on the needles, though, just to also allay everyone's fears there. Are they single use or are they just cleaned after? How's that work?
Single use, thrown into a sharps container and disposed of. Yeah. There's, I think there have been single use since the mid 80s or so. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. All right. So no fears there then. All right. How about, you talked about so much, but is there any particular sort of success story or something you're really proud of that you'd like everyone to know about?
There's a bunch after 15 years of care, which is really gratifying for me. One that stands out is a stroke patient who had numbness and tingling down her left side, her left arm, her left foot, her left leg, all the way down to her foot, and then pins and needles on the palm of her hand and on the sole of her foot. And we had a round of treatments, and it gradually went away, and it's gone now, and it's been 9 months now, and it hasn't come back. So wow. What we were able to do really is regenerate, stimulate the body to heal the nerves and improve circulation. That's basically what happened there. I have many success stories with allergies. I still tell people it still amazes me how effective the system is. I've got, I had one guy who he had postnasal drip from chronic sinusitis. and he would wake up in the morning because it would tickle his throat, and he hadn't set an alarm for years. So after his last treatment, he said he woke up late for work because it didn't wake him up. He was no longer experiencing the postnasal drip, which would wake him up in the morning.
Well, that's a great testimonial, but you might have had to send a note to his office to get him off the hook on that one.
That's right, doctor's note.
But also, my next question, sort of two parts to it. As we know, and you talked about, this style of medicine has literally been around for centuries, right? So it's probably somewhat important to stick with those traditions, follow those tried and true things that we know work. But what can you do, first part, sort of for continuing education, to sort of continue to hone your craft? And then second of all, what can you do to help bring it into the modern age, modernize it a little bit where people understand it better?
Okay. Well, continuing ed is required for us to maintain our license, right? We're licensed under the Medical Board of New Jersey. And I typically take more hours of training than are required. Like I said, I'm continuing to study stroke and brain injury. And this May, there's a 3-day meeting down in North Carolina. And it's a lot of the same people who are studying this together. And we're doing a great job. We refer each other across the country. In terms of technology, to me, this is the greatest time to be involved in acupuncture because we have MRIs and CT scans and PET scans, and we can see the results of what we're doing. And even 10, 15 plus years ago, they showed through a functional MRI that stimulating acupuncture points lowers pain centers in the brain. So there's tons of research out there of the efficacy of acupuncture. The big question is your second question, which is how do we get the word out? And really, it's a combination of one person at a time, of me treating people and then telling their friends. I had someone in last night. He is having such a fantastic improvement. He's going to tell all his friends, even if they don't live in this area, he's going to open their awareness to the possibilities of what they can do. And someone told him, you really should have your neck looked at by an acupuncturist because you've tried other things and they're not working. And that's one of the problems we have today, right? Is people will say, you're my last resort. And we really should be the first resort. It's really not an invasive thing. We're not giving you pharmaceuticals that might have side effects. The needles aren't going to hurt you because we've studied anatomy. We know where to put them. The dangers there are so minuscule compared to the benefits, as opposed to other modalities that we have out there. Another thing I do with another doctor is we have a podcast on Monday nights, and it's directed specifically to the audience, the population, not acupuncturists. It's more meant to explain at the most basic levels what we do, what we can do for you, and how it works, and some other things too, right? Nutrition, exercise, ways to reduce stress, and things like that.
So where can they find that? Where can they find that podcast? Let's make sure everybody knows where that's.
It's on Facebook on Monday nights. It's called the Practical Medicine Podcast. And then once that show is recorded, we put it up onto Spotify, on YouTube. It has its own page all over the place. It's on Instagram.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Doc, that's all. Fascinating stuff. I think really everyone would be doing themselves a favor by learning more about this type of thing. So, but besides all that, what does a doctor of acupuncture do for fun or any hobbies? I know it's been a tough year, but there must be something.
Well, this acupuncturist has a motorcycle and loves to ride his motorcycle. I guess I've had this particular bike for 3 summer seasons, and I put 29,000 miles on the bike.
Wow.
Yeah. My first summer, I shipped the bike out to California and rode back with my friends. And then the second summer, I rode down to Key West, met up with a friend of mine from college down there. And then this past summer, shipped it out to Sturgis, which is a big motorcycle rally, and rode back. And we stayed away from the crowds during 2020, which was pretty easy to do. I don't really need to be in the mix of all that fun. I want to be out on the bike riding through the countryside and get to see the United States. Lucky me.
That's the perfect social distancing type of hobby.
It really is.
Just you.
we've been joking about it since the beginning. We're never closer than 6 feet from each other, and we spend hours doing that. And now we have Bluetooth technology, so you can chat with each other about the sights you're seeing without having to get close to each other. And we can pack a lunch.
Fantastic, Doc. Well, thank you so much for taking time on my spotlight on local business. I really appreciate it. Any final words you'd like to say here?
Just thank you very much, Kevin. This was great. I appreciate it.
Awesome. And I'll be coming to see you for those allergies.